Okay, we are good.
6 o'clock.
Okay, we're at 6 o'clock.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. Start with roll call.
Lori Massman,
Here.
Scott Hovis,
Here.
Ken Enlow,
Here.
Lorelei Schwartz,
Here.
Lindsay Rowden,
Here.
Stephanie Johnson,
Here.
Brad Bates.
Yes, here.
Thank you.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, now we need approval of the consent agenda items.
Move to
So moved.
approve.
Lorelei and Ken, is that
Sec-
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And the consent agenda items.
Were you asking for approval of the minutes earlier or the consent agenda items?
I think it was approval of the agenda
As presented.
presented.
Yes.
Okay.
You're asking for the consent agenda,
And now I'm asking for the consent agenda,
including.
Did we vote?
We have to,
We
we
never
gotta
voted.
vote.
the meeting notes.
We have to vote on the agenda.
We got to vote.
We need to
Just did
vote on
that.
the agenda.
Okay,
Oh, we just did that. Lorelei and Ken.
we just did that.
But did we vote?
No, you had a motion and a second. Now you have to call for a vote.
Is there any,
We had a first and a second, but we didn't actually vote.
Okay, so now we need to vote.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll need to do it. You've got a first and a second, any discussion? And then.
And I asked for discussion. I was waiting, but I didn't, I don't think we have any, do we?
Then ask for all those in favor.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
All those opposed? Okay,
motion passes.
motion passes.
Then consent agenda items,
For the agenda.
That's
Now
for
we
the
have
agenda. Now we have the
agenda.
consent agenda items,
which includes.
which will include the regular meeting minutes from April 13th, 2020. Need a motion?
Anything we need
So
to
moved.
discuss? Okay, Ken.
second.
Thank you, Ken. Second, Lorelei.
Yes.
Do we have any discussion?
You're gonna the nays and the yeas and nays.
Okay, all those in favor?
I,
All those opposed? Okay, I'm gonna move on to
Superintendent update.
Larry. It's your turn to give us a superintendent update if you'd like.
Yes. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for your patience here with any technology issues. Just some norms or reminders of keeping your mic on mute. If you need to speak, you can take off your mic or raise up your hand. And hopefully we'll recognize that there has been some delay, but hopefully I think we're working the kinks out. Thanks to Joe and Scott. They're here in our technology department on making this opportunity available for us to be able to meet when we cannot meet face to face. An update on just as far as with my report. Tomorrow will have been 8 weeks ago tomorrow, our last day at school. So it's been 8 weeks through tomorrow, and quite an undertaking. Our staff, they've done a tremendous job. I shared with you at our April board meeting our priorities. Number one, before you can ensure that our kids are learning, we want to make sure that they have food. And Jason will give an update during his report. But Dana and her folks have just done a tremendous job, and a thank you to them. That's expanded. Thank you to Stephanie Johnson, the Boys and Girls Club, and the partnership with the evening meals as well. But Jason will give an update. But I just want to give them a shout out and tell them thank you. It truly has been a team effort. It has been a work in progress as we've moved through this, but making it happen. I shared last week, it was Teacher Appreciation Week, and shared that there's some teachers that across the world that some that watch things happen and some that wonder what happened. I feel very confident that our teachers make things happen, and finishing strong. We've got 2.5 weeks left of school, and there's a lot of different parts of that, but it's been a very positive experience, making the best of a situation as we work through the COVID-19 and ensuring safety for all of our students and our staff and our workers throughout this. I presented today actually with the Downtown Rotary, gave them an update on what we're doing with today, what we've done up until this point, and then as we go forward, we'll touch on here in a bit with our closing out the 1920 school year, with graduation with Jeff City High School, summer school, and then re-entry plans as we look at going forward to ensure a safe environment and appropriate social distancing. Those are some things we're working through. We have ordered masks for all of our staff, and we will be asking them, encouraging them. We're not requiring it, but we are encouraging them when they are working with others. I have my mask here tonight. I don't have it on here right now. Sometimes it does not project as clearly, and with the board meeting, not having my mask on. But I appreciate everyone's patience with that. We want to take this seriously, and as we look at plans going forward of what that looks like. I spoke at the Chamber Coffee a couple weeks ago, and just kind of an update of what we've where we are and what we've learned from it. And at the end of the day, we want to connect with kids and ensure they experience student success, whether in the classroom face-to-face or whether at home remotely. There's alternative instructional methods. AIM as an acronym that we're working through, and how can we be more effective. We are making plans to be back in school this fall, but we are making plans, preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best, that if we have any type of remote learning, whether that's in conjunction with face-to-face, whether it's completely at home, trying to be proactive with that. And our folks are working tirelessly with that, and doing a great job with that. Before I shift and talk about it, I'm going to ask some of our folks to talk about our phases on where we are right now. I did want to touch on, we had discussed, and there have been some conversations regarding driver's education, and with that Jeff City High School and Capital City High School and what that looks like. There was some consideration of changing that, and we have working through that, vetting that. It is a life skill, and we have many of our students that do not have the opportunity to drive vehicles. There are simulators. Most schools do not have driving at school, but that's something that can set us apart. So Gary, Bob James, Ben Meldrum, they're working through of how can we be more effective with some life skills, and what that would even look like going forward. So as of right now, we're planning on continuing to have driver's education both in the classroom and in the field, or on our driver's education course that's hosted at Jefferson City, of keeping that, and but looking at ways we could improve that going forward with that. So Gary or Brian or Shelby, you want to give a quick overview or anything you'd like to share on that as we go forward on driver's education, to possibly add to that? Gary, secondary wise, could you give a quick overview there as we look to the process of that?
I'd be glad to, Larry. Am I coming across okay? Okay, so, with the change from the block schedule to the 7-period day, we were looking at how can we serve as many kids as possible with both classroom instruction and drive time. And so we've been talking about it probably for 12 to 18 months. And then earlier, or this fall, early spring, I can't remember the exact timeline, we had decided, let's give it another year. Let's see how well or how many students we can serve, driving range over JC, no driving range at CC, and just how can we use another year to gauge how many kids we can serve. And then we had a couple teachers resign, and we thought, okay, so maybe next year might be the year to make the change. But as conversations continued recently, I think we're going to move forward and see how we can best serve as many kids as possible with drive time. So Shelby and I have already met once, and we're going to get together sometime tomorrow again to talk through a couple of items, one of them being driver's ed and how we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any board members have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to touch on with regards to driver's education?
I just would say I appreciate you guys taking the extra time to look into it. It is a life skill, and we service a lot of kids who don't have the opportunity to learn the right and the wrong way, and we're all driving on the same road. So I think this is a great choice to keep as many kids safe as we can.
I agree.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Gary. Thank you for that update. Where we are today, as far as having closing out the 1920 school year, and we've given dates. At the last time we've given dates here of we were to have high school graduation at Jefferson City. This coming Sunday was the original plan that was approved over a year ago, and we're not able to do that. We communicated that with parents. Thank you to Brenda Hatfield as kind of one as a parent herself of a senior, but also facilitating our surveying of gathering feedback from our parents and our families. It is a celebration. Just a kudos to our the senior class at Jefferson City and their parents. I mean, they've gone through renovations at Jefferson City High School. They had a tornado last year. Here they missed the fourth quarter of their senior year. So kudos to them. It's the finest steel goes through the hottest fires, my mother would say, and they've overcame a lot of adversity, and I know they'll be successful for it, and I appreciate their patience with that. With that being said, we still have our scheduled days here in June. On Friday evening, I believe June 10th. Is that correct, that day, June 10th? Let me ensure that.
June 12th and July
June 12th. Okay, correct. June 12th. That we've announced that. We've sent that out to families with the weather makeup of June 12th of on Saturday, June 13th. And then a second possibility of July 10th on Friday evening with a Saturday makeup of the 11th. So we're working through that now. As of right now, we're still scheduled for those next two times. We are looking at a third alternative date along with that. When Brenda surveyed our parents, they said they'd like to celebrate together, and we want to do that if at all possible. We will have an alternate date with that where we would break it down into groups so we could do that here by the end of the summer. We do not have any plans of having a virtual graduation with the current guidelines with social distancing. We just do not feel like we can ensure a safe environment for our families if we held a graduation celebration with our students, with the number of students and families participating. So we are right now scheduled, but we're going to have another alternate plan that'll be coming out here in the next week. We're working with Jeff City High School and administration, and we'll communicate with folks as we look at having another option here going forward. So the summer school we're going to have, as far as just kind of an update on that, would Brian and Shelby, we had Brian, Shelby, Bridget, Lori, and Gary. As far as a task force here, how can we ensure that our students are learning during summer school? Again, we would love to have face-to-face. Unfortunately, that's not possible, and making the best of the situation. So they looked at options. We sent out some things to families. So would Brian and Shelby, would you guys maybe give an overview of our summer school and our launch program of what that looks like going forward, please?
Yeah, I'll start, and Shelby, you feel free to jump in. Can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about what our summer school program would look like, knowing that we have to make up ground. We also need a summer school program that's going to be rigorous and be supportive of the fact that we lost a lot of new learning in the last quarter of school. And so we had concerns about knowing that the likelihood that we'd be able to have an NC program was highly unlikely. And so we started down the path of, do we take our current virtual learning program and continue that through the summer, or did we have the capacity to improve that by creating a summer school curriculum, multiple curriculum, for the summer program. In doing that, we started to have conversations with Springfield School District that has been doing virtual programming through a program called Launch, and their districts all across the state of Missouri have been using Launch. And so we started having conversations with them, and what we've learned is that they've been in the business and doing this for some time now, and actually have a very robust summer program in terms of training of teachers, the fidelity of each student getting the same academics and the same support by teachers. There's a lot of follow through with teachers. Launch themselves follow up with the teachers to ensure they're communicating right with the families. There's a very specific curriculum that needs to be followed. There's assessment pieces that go with it that are in place. So we found it to be a pretty robust program, far better than what we felt we could put together in short notice in the amount of time we have left. And so it's the nice thing about it, and maybe Jason want to talk about it, is that the way it works is that we would pay so much per student to use that, but we get to count the ADA and we collect money back on ADA for our students to attend the program. And so it's kind of a win-win situation, but we believe that utilizing their program, they're willing to hire our teachers. Any teacher that's willing to apply, they're willing to use our teachers to teach our students. And so we just saw it as a win-win opportunity for our summer program. And along the way, we hope to learn a few things, and maybe we can take what we learn from them and maybe help to improve our future capacity if we need any kind of virtual learning. So Shelby, I'll let you weigh in if I missed some points there.
One of the things that we found very impressive is right now there's 270 school districts across the state of Missouri that are a part of Launch, and they are planning to serve over 50,000 students in the state of Missouri this summer in summer school. What was unique about Launch is they started this virtual programming 8 years ago, and people thought they were crazy, but Springfield took a chance on them and became the fiscal agent for them. And so that's why everyone's very much attracted to this program, because it's solid. They use Missouri learning standards, they hire only Missouri teachers, and they only serve Missouri students. We had one of our hurdles in deciding what to do is obviously we provide quite a bit of employment opportunities for our staff during the summer. And so this was also one of the factors when we were looking at our decision on what to do. Launch does hire our teachers, but it's a fairly rigorous process because they want teachers that can truly facilitate virtual instruction and meet the needs of students. So some of our teachers have applied. I don't have a number just yet on how many have applied and been hired, but we are excited about those that will have that opportunity, because like Brian mentioned, we want to be able to capitalize on some of the things that they learn. And we can apply it to what we're doing moving forward. We're also excited about the numbers, because when we first looked at the survey information from parents, we really didn't know how many students we could anticipate attending summer school. And right now we have 1,220 students registered for summer school. 498 of them are elementary students, 224 are middle school students, and 498 are high school students, and that does not include credit recovery. Those are only Launch students. So those are credit acquisition for the high school students, and then credit recovery we're running through E2020, which we have done in the past. So there's a significant number of students that are going that route also. So we're excited, and we hope when we come back in June, we can give you some exciting updates on all that is taking place for summer school.
Okay, thank you, Shelby, for that report. Along that, leading into, and I'm going to steal all the thunder of our phase 3 and our reentry plans, but we know we've had some parents communicate with us that have shared that I am not going to be sending my students back to, or my kids back to school until there's a vaccine. We recognize that nationwide. There's some folks that have those opinions. We understand the importance of having a safe environment for our children, even though I think we all recognize and medically that school-age children are some of the least likely of getting the virus. But we also want to take every precaution to ensure a safe environment for our students. So we have some medically high-risk children, and we recognize that. We have approximately 10% of our students that live with their grandparents, and our grandparents are at the high risk. I think folks recognize that. of what that looks like. So as we work through a reentry plan, how can we ensure a safe environment? Preparing for social distancing. I was asked the question today at the downtown Rotary of what do athletics look like when you're practicing social distancing? And I think we can all recognize that is that will be a challenge. I think we all recognize. I'd shared when I was a head football coach in high school that I had some kids that practiced social distancing that didn't want to hit anybody, but unfortunately those guidelines weren't in place now. But we'll see how, as we move forward, we'll be getting guidance from the Missouri State High School Activities Association. With that, I think they recognize the importance of activities and athletics on student success. I think we all recognize that, but it's part of a bigger. I mean, you look at not only at the high school level, but at the collegiate, the professional level as well. So we'll be getting some guidance there, but we are working through that of what a reentry plan would look like. So with that being said, we have some, as far as our 3 phases in our reentry plan that we're working through right now, and scenarios and what it looks like. Brian, Jason, Shelby, would you guys give just kind of an overview without getting into the weeds too much? If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, raise your hand, or so we can see. You might have a question on screen here, but for our board members. But would you guys please give an update, an overview of our reentry plan, what we're looking at going forward?
Well, I'll start, but I think Shelby and Brian and Ryan might be able to provide quite a bit more detail. But our group, I feel like, has been doing an amazing job. We've been tackling problems we never thought we'd have to face. First, we had to go through what does it look like to get through the end of the school year, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that. Then what do we do with summer school? How do we handle that? And so we're checking off some of these things, but the next task is way bigger. So what does it look like in the fall, and how do we get everybody back in place? And Shelby and Brenda put together a Google Doc for us, and we're just collecting everything that we need to think about in order to be ready to open safely in the fall. And then at the same time, also be thinking of contingency plans of, well, if we're not able to open in the fall, what does that look like? And so early on with our other challenges that we face, we don't have a whole lot of answers. We have a ton of questions that we have out there, and we know we need to figure out answers. And I can promise you that we are working on it pretty much nonstop. Shelby, Ryan, Brian, do you want to talk any more details about?
Well, I'll just say that Shelby is heading this up, and she's doing a great job. Our ultimate goal here is that we take these many questions that Jason just referred to, and that we find the answers, because we know that our staff and our parents and our students, they're going to need the answers in order for us to do our reentry. For when do people start getting back into the building? How many people do we let in the building at a time? What is the expectation when you're in the building? There's just so many questions as to what that looks like, and we need to get those answers in place. So the process that we're following is to take the document that Shelby's been developing for us, and we're going to divide that out and begin the process of, let's start working on what initial answers or responses might be to these, and then we'll get larger groups involved for them to vet those responses, ultimately with our goal to get some very solid answers that we can begin to Ryan's department then can begin to communicate out to our staff and to our community about what is the reentry process back into our schools going to look like, very specifically, down to some very small details. So that's our ultimate goal with the process.
And we recognize that we have a responsibility to protect our employees and give them peace of mind that we're creating a safe workplace for all of them, regardless of when we have them come back to work. And so we worked last week to come up with basically a training, and we included pieces of how to properly wash your hands, how to wear a mask, how to wear gloves, what are our procedures when parents drop things off, or we are giving students materials back to parents in the drive-by pickup scenario. And so, like Brian and Jason both mentioned, we're trying to close out the school year while we try to keep everyone safe. We also know from an HR perspective that we want to make sure everyone's informed, because now honestly is not a time to be loosey-goosey on our requirements and expectations for people. So we sent it was in a PowerPoint format, sent it to all of our employees last Friday. We want them to review them. There's some videos, some information, and sign off that they've been informed, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to say, you were informed, we expect you to do these things, just to help give us one layer of support with our employees, that we are trying to keep everyone healthy, regardless of what your personal opinion is about wearing masks or gloves. There's a reason and a method to our madness. So we got a lot of good feedback about that, and we intend to do the same type of training and send it out to our staff as we work through phase 2 and eventually phase 3.
Okay, thank you for that, Shelby. Anything else, or do you guys have any questions with regards to the COVID-19? I did ask the next part here on the reports is Brian and Jason, and I know they kind of overlap. I did want Jason to give an update on our food once it gets to his report. Do you have any other questions for me of my report or any of the information that we presented?
Before we move on, Larry, one thing that the board should know is that we do have an employee wellness survey going out later this week. We're just trying to touch base with our employees and hear from them how they're feeling about the situation and their work environment and coming back. Brenda's done a really good job working with Panorama, our survey company, to get that ready. So Brenda, if you have anything else to add to that, but I think that's an important part.
Nope, it'll be going out this week. We're surveying both teachers as well as all staff.
Larry,
Okay.
I do have one question.
Yes, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, as I hear a lot of reports about from a lot of different industries and so forth, I just had one question about, does our plan include, and will we communicate what specifically we will do if we have a facility or a group of students or staff where we have an occurrence of, a test positive of COVID, once we kind of reinitiate more normal operations?
We do. And that's a specific exact question. What would we do if a staff member, if we have a student, if we have a parent that comes for an IEP meeting, if we have any stakeholder, but starting with our students and our staff, what would that look like? And what is the timeline as far as a re-entry once it's identified? If you have a student on a bus and they travel with the bus, and then everyone that's on that bus, those are questions we don't have answers to, but of kind of our working document that we're utilizing, we will have answers to that. And that's one of the questions that we're working through, getting guidance from MSBA as well, the Missouri School Board Association, as we work through that as well. But we will have some answers, but we do not at this time.
And to that point, one of the things we are looking at, our transportation software that we use has a package that they call Z-Pass, and basically it's a scanning. The student scans their card when they get on the bus, and they scan the card when they get off the bus. And it's something we've been interested in for a while, but I listened to a podcast last week, and it's a lot of people are looking to that just for contact tracing, that if you do have or you have a student that you find out does test positive, you can find out exactly what day they rode the bus, when they were on the bus, who was on the bus at the same time. So it isn't anything we bought yet, but it's certainly something we're looking at.
A group of us who graduated in '73, we have a classmate who's in South Korea, went there in the military and retired. He sent a YouTube video out that just was very powerful in terms of showing how effective the contact tracing and the aggressive testing among a population or group where there were positive tests of COVID, how they were able to really put a very dramatic change in the line of how the spread was going. And so I just, I'm assuming that was there, but I just wanted to make sure that we, know upfront exactly what we'll do in every scenario if we get a positive result.
Absolutely. Great question. And we know some of those questions. part of the big questions will be, will the social distancing requirements still be in place? The stay-at-home order being released here in Missouri, but still the social distancing. And so what some schools are looking at, and we're vetting through, that you cannot ensure social distancing if you have all of your students in school. So having smaller class sizes, even looking at considerations of having a combination of not half the students being at school at one time. So we're trying to consider all options. We know we'll get some guidance, we believe, from our state agencies and so forth. But those are some options that we're just saying you don't have the space to ensure social distancing. So if that is still in place, we know it will look drastically different. If those are still in place, if they are lifted, and if they're not, it will look a little bit more normal. I think we all recognize that normal will never be the new norm anymore. Even let's say it was back to normal, I think we all recognize there are opportunities that we've learned and realized that learning remotely can help connect with kids, and how we can better utilize that if it does get back to where it is. Like I said, the norm's not the norm, but we'll work through that as well. So, so next on the reports here. Yes, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask you, I just want to ask one quick question. You briefly just mentioned the MSBA guidelines and recommendations, which I've been reading over this week, and the recommendations are extensive and didn't really seem to be feasible in very many schools that I know of. Do you have thoughts on their guidelines, or talk to anybody at MSBA to see if they're reevaluating their initial recommendations?
I have, and I've read that document. I've had a conversation with Melissa Randall that they sent out. I think they were looking to try to cover every possible scenario, and they are called considerations. And so I believe they are, and the document is considerations that, hey, you need to consider this, not as in, hey, recommendation, you need to do every one of these items. So we recognize, you read some of those like, okay, you need to vet it through and justify whether you decide for it or against it. But it is considerations that they at least want to think through every possible scenario to ensure safety. So we do recognize that, and we'll be working through that as considerations, not specifically as requirements.
Okay, thank you, Larry. We're going to move on to Dr. Schindorf, Chief of Learning, will give an update.
Okay, by way of the academic side, if you recall, last month I spoke with you about some of the platforms that we were using in terms of things like Google Classroom and iReady and Scholastic, Learn at Home, and things like that. We are continuing to use those platforms. Our staff continues to work towards ongoing engagement with our students, continuing to follow up with students, making either using Google Chat or making phone calls and staying in touch with them, and continuing to provide instructional support. We still have staff who are, they're coming in, they're creating the take-home learning packets that go home to students. And so we have both pieces still in place. I would tell you that it is, I think I said this last month, it is not a perfected system, but it's also not one that we want to become our norm. We are making the best of virtual learning, which we've not been in the business of doing, but I believe that given the short notice we had, I think that our staff, our teachers and our principals, everyone came together, and I think we created the best system that we possibly could, and it seems to be working. There continue to be questions that we get. There continue to be some concerns about some of the pieces that we use, and we address those concerns, and we work to improve those as we go. But for the most part, the systems we're using, our digital platforms, they continue to be our saving grace through this, and they're working for us in terms of the virtual lessons. But they're not without challenges, and we'll just continue. I think we have another, is it 11 or 12 school days? We're going to continue to this process and using these platforms and continuing to work, use the instructional packets that we're doing, and we'll continue to move forward with that system. Where we go from here, we've talked a little bit about it already, and probably going to talk a little more, but we're moving our attention towards how do we take what we know from our virtual learning, what we know from fourth quarter, and we did miss out on a lot of new learning. You need to know that. There was a lot of supporting instruction that went on, but it's very difficult to move into a lot of new learning virtually. And so we know that there was a lot of new learning that didn't happen. There's been a lot of work behind that piece and identifying exactly by grade level what were the skills and concepts that some students missed out on. And we are starting to formulate a plan for, can we address those through our launch program? And if not, how do we adapt or make some changes, some tweaks to when we return to school in the fall? How are we going to make up those pieces so that we don't have gaps in learning? So I want you to know that we have folks working on that, and we'll continue to find ways that we can work on those gaps. And a lot of attention right now, as you just heard, on our summer school program and our reentry program, addressing issues like what's graduation going to look like and how do we get our students to school to pick up their belongings. And so a lot of those pieces are now starting to take our attention, and we'll continue to work on those. So.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, up next we have Jason.
Yeah, the operations side, Larry mentioned the food delivery and distribution. I couldn't be more proud of Dana and her folks, Brandon and Frank on the transportation side. Ryan's been a huge help in getting the word out. We actually got some help from Veterans United, who took our data points that we had and created a map for us so people can see where all of our stops are with our buses. So that was a new addition that we've just added. So we've been serving anywhere between 1374 students, and they're getting 3 meals each day. So that was the highest that we had. And it's dropped off a little bit in the last few days. We've been around 1,050 to 1,100, but that's still serving close to, we've averaged 1,190 students a day since April 1st. And that's getting 3 meals with help of Boys and Girls Club and in that the dinner part as well. So that's been going great. Bridget's folks, we've actually had some of our special services paras who've been riding the buses for us because we didn't have enough food service workers and bus workers. So they've been pitching in there. So it's just been a giant team effort that's gone really well. The facility and the facilities part, they're working super hard right now, trying to work on cleaning and working on plans on how to clean differently once we do come back to school and we get people back in our buildings. But our maintenance crew, the last 3 months have approved contracts that are going to be worked on throughout the summer, and we're going to be doing about $6 million worth of facility improvements throughout the district in the summer. And so us being closed, we've been able to tackle some of those tasks already, like our playgrounds have already been done and some roof projects have already been completed. So we've got a head start on some of that. We got some good news recently. We are replacing the bleachers at both middle schools, and those bleachers are being manufactured in Michigan, and all the manufacturing plants in Michigan have been shut down, but they've recently reopened, and Frank told me today that they plan to ship at the end of June and install in July, and fingers crossed everything goes great. We'll still have them ready before school starts like we were hoping. The business side, still paying people, still paying bills, still working on that. We actually have our audit scheduled for August, so still making plans and moving forward. We had, Desi had a webinar today to give guidance on the CARES money that's coming our way. We were hoping to have all of our questions answered, and there's still some big questions that are unanswered, but a lot of moving parts still. Be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Jason?
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks.
Okay. So I have to keep muting this. So future dates, we have our regular board meeting, which is Monday, June 15th. The backup graduation date on here is Friday, June 19th.
That is not correct.
That's not right.
Hold that thought.
That's June.
Yes,
June
12th. With the
So
rain
June
rain
19th.
date of the following Saturday, the 13th. The alternate backup graduation date is Friday, July 10th, with Saturday, the 11th being the rain date. And then we have our regular board meeting on Monday, July 13th. And real quick, before I turn it over to Lindsay to do her, I just want to, on behalf of the board, thank everyone, from admin to just the whole staff. I mean, this is a difficult time and you all are just, just keep on trucking. So thank you for that. I've been at the Boys and Girls Club a couple Fridays, and I know that it's packing food, and it's just everybody, we're all in this together. So we need to get through it together. So thank you, and make sure that the staff knows that we greatly appreciate everything they do.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Lori. It has been a team effort. So appreciate the board
support and everyone that's truly, if there was ever time of
it takes a village
that
here with community stronger together. So thank you to everybody.
Jimmy Fallon did a great little bit the other night on his show. He had a song he wrote and it said, teachers should make $1 billion. I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Lindsay?
Okay, motion to suspend open to enter into the closed meeting by roll call vote pursuant to chapter 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri, sections 1, legal actions, 2, leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate, 3, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of an employee, 13, individually identifiable personnel records, and 14, records which are protected from disclosure by law.
Second.
I'm not quick on the unmute. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call. We're doing a roll call.
Okay, Lori Massman,
Yes.
Scott Hovis,
Yes.
Ken Enlow,
Yes.
Lorelei Schwartz,
Yes.
Lindsay Rowden,
Yes.
Stephanie Johnson,
Yes.
Brad Bates.
Yes.
Thank you.